Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Partner Spotlight series. It's week 7, and today we have our friends from Infor joining us to talk about technology and supply chain resiliency, and we're going to cover a lot of topics. Heavy emphasis on visibility today as well, but specifically around supply chain. Let me just remind you that, again, this is week 7 of our Partner Spotlight series, where it's an offshoot of what we've been doing with our out of office hours series that we've been running since May. So hopefully you found this to be very educational, informing. I know I'm having a blast being able to talk to our partners and understand the solutions that they're offering their customers. And quite frankly, a lot of their customers are our customers too. So we have joint customers in this ecosystem. So joining me today is Monica Truelsch, Senior Director of Product Management at Infor. Monica, welcome to the Partner Spotlight series.
Well, thank you very much, Thomas. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And it's good to see you again. One of the things that I always like to do when I bring on our partners and talk just real quick on something that, how I know you. I first met Monica in 2011. We've worked together since 2011, and we were working for another software company back in the day. But Monica, great to just partner up with you again.
Great to reconnect with you once again too.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so let me remind everyone that we are live, which means you can post your questions, you can post your comments. We encourage that. And so from time to time, I will be looking at another screen. I'll be looking at LinkedIn Live specifically for the comments and questions. And then we also have people that are on a different platform on Zoom Live as well. And we'll be monitoring those questions and comments as well. And those will be fed to me. And of course, any questions that come through, we'll make sure we get those to Monica. If there's something that we do not get to today, we'll be happy to reach out to Monica to get those questions, and we'll get answers to you. But again, collaboration during these sessions is appreciated. And with that said, Monica, are you ready to get into the hot seat here?
Let's do it.
All right. So the first thing I want to do is, there's Infor and there's Infor Nexus. And I think sometimes maybe there's a little bit of confusion. And so it would be great for you to just explain, the difference or how Infor and Infor Nexus are, merged together, and what really you're doing at Infor and Infor Nexus.
Happy to do that. Absolutely. Infor is the 3rd largest ERP software company in the world. Not a lot of companies know that, but it is the formation of quite a few sort of mid-market focused ERP systems that started a number of years ago. The distinction for Infor is that they were also pretty much the first ERP company to make a big bet on cloud. The decision was made quite some time ago to transition all of the technologies into a cloud-based, network-oriented solution. The Cloud Suite ERP is a hallmark of Infor solutions into the market space, and they have grown through acquisition in the past 10, 15 years of their existence. And one of the companies that they acquired in 2015 was a firm called GT Nexus. GT Nexus was well recognized in the international logistics space as a platform for network connectivity with ocean and air carriers, with global forwarders and 3PLs, for the management of the complexities of international supply chain, whether it was import or export product flows, and the distinct logistics challenges of dealing with all of the parties and the different chains of custody handoff and so forth that go along with international logistics. So under Infor, we have rebranded since 2019 as Infor Nexus. We are a product group within Infor, and I am specifically involved in product management for our transportation capability on the Infor Nexus network platform.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Now, I think that's pretty clear. It is for me, at least.
Good.
And hopefully for everyone out there. So I want to get your thoughts on this. We're in the middle of this pandemic, and we've seen many companies exposed with their supply chain issues, and now they're looking to use technology to build more resilient supply chains. Or, quite frankly, they were already in the middle of doing these technology projects as well. So we've heard from different partners talking about different, solutions and just different ways that all this has come together. I'm always interested in understanding which technology solutions and products that Infor Nexus customers are buying and implementing. So it'd be great to get your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. Our traditional customer segment has been Fortune 2000 global companies, firms that have very diverse, very far-flung, globalized supply chains. While they, of course, have significant outbound transportation capabilities, the streamlining of their international lines of supply, the transportation costs, the availability of goods, the assurance of supply for those goods are top of mind for their logistics planning. So we had a number of projects in flight with companies in the medical device space, in aerospace, in manufacturing, and in retail at the end of 2019 and the start of 2020. And when COVID hit, it was interesting because in the international logistics space, the Chinese New Year is an area around which you plan a lot of your ocean shipping. Chinese New Year basically shuts down not just China, but also a broad swath of Southeast Asia these days for goods getting out of supplier locations there and over to North America and into Europe. So there was a lot of accelerated ocean shipping to try to get goods out before the usual shutdown in Southeast Asia. This year, when China announced they were extending that delay and you would not be opening up a lot of these factories that had normally taken a week or two holiday for another month or so, there was a huge focus on international supply chain visibility. Not only when are my suppliers going to be able to open up and start producing again, when are ships going to be leaving ports in Southeast Asia and making way to replenish my inventory here in the States. So we were watching a lot of these trends on our network data and so forth as well. But we found that the projects that we had in flight where companies might have staged visibility into goods in transit at a later stage of a project, and perhaps they were connecting their suppliers for order management or global trade finance or something like that first, suddenly decided that visibility into their goods in motion was really what they needed right now. And so we found a lot of projects where things were reprioritized in terms of what they wanted to go live with, or they were accelerated in terms of the schedule to focus back on logistics visibility, which was so critical for them. And it wasn't just in streamlining flows and orders and transactions with their far-flung supplier network, but it was in making sure they knew exactly where their goods were at any point in time, whether it was in ocean and air or on the road, so that they could determine, do we have goods available to promise to our customers? Are we going to be in a stock out position on our store shelves? So we've seen a definite uptick in visibility interest. But recently, the past few months, what's selling very, very well for us is our transportation sourcing capability that is focused primarily on contract procurement for ocean and air freight. But companies were dealing with the volatility in capacity in international logistics. over the past several months. And while they might have been skating spot markets and so forth for a long time to get the lowest rates possible, they're recognizing the value of having contracted carriers in their freight networks with reliable capacity that they can go back to, because it's all about dealing with uncertainty at this point. Companies are opting to hold a little more inventory than they might have in 2019, because you just don't know if a truck is going to be available. You don't know if an ocean container or a chassis is going to be available. You don't know if the carrier is going to be blanking a sailing out of Shanghai or out of Singapore, and you're going to have to wait another 2 weeks for your goods to in a container to make it to an eastern port or a western port to fill your inbound supply chains, and so you get to your end customers. So it's uncertainty that customers are trying to wrestle with right now and shore up their technology stack to provide a little more agility with their carriers and their service providers, as well as ongoing visibility to goods in transit.
Oh, great! That's very very interesting, and we're seeing the same thing. You know, visibility is super hot right now, and I know what you guys are doing. You're tying that all the way back with like the platform, right? Because you have, like you said, the ERP, so customers can manage the entire process. So if I'm a manufacturer and I want to buy all my raw materials, I can use Infor's platform. I can book the shipments with the carriers. I can track it all. I can do everything. So is that fair to say?
Yes. Although even historically, before the Infor acquisition, our role in global supply chains was always around providing purchase order context or sales order context around shipment tracking and visibility. So the other half of the InforNexus platform that doesn't deal specifically with logistics deals with supplier collaboration and supplier order management and global commerce and trade. So when you have a far-flung ecosystem of overseas suppliers, the digitalization of your purchase orders with them, eliminating letters of credit, visibility to their work in progress, all helps you align the upstream funnel for your inbound supply chain. And then you need coordination with your freight forwarders in country. They're the ones that are arranging perhaps the ocean bookings and making sure that containers are picked up at the various suppliers, or that orders are consolidated at their facilities to stuff containers more effectively and increase your asset utilization. The context or the value that we've always tried to communicate to our customers is that it's not simply about tracking that ocean vessel. You need to be able to tie your purchase order with that supplier to what is actually being shipped. Is there an overage? Is it an undershipment? Are there goods or shrinkage in transit? So that you can track specifically what's expected and take that information downstream into your customer service and your inventory planning groups, so that they have reliable information about when goods are going to be available in market for them to promise to customers or to schedule for store replenishment. So when we partnered on the InforNexus side with Project 44 to integrate real-time road visibility with our international logistics visibility as well, it was with an eye towards adding that rich data from the Project 44 network into the purchase order or sales order context that we always felt was critical to drive value from supply chain visibility solutions. And that is a message obviously resonating in the market today.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that and that explanation. So you mentioned some of the industries, but it would be interesting to know where the uptick is right now, specifically by industry. Where are you guys seeing the most demand right now for the InforNexus products?
Well, we've had traditionally a very strong presence in retail and fashion industries. So a lot of the major footwear providers, a lot of the major apparel brands were using InforNexus capabilities specifically to manage their overseas suppliers, their contract manufacturers, even tier one material suppliers to that group, as well as the inbound supply chains for those goods to make sure that their retail partners and retail destinations had appropriate inventory for seasonal needs, for promotional needs, back to school, Christmas, spring swimwear, all that sort of thing. As we know from COVID, retail took a serious hit. Stores closed, nobody was shopping. When people did buy clothes, they were buying tops. They weren't buying trousers because Zoom only looks at you from the waist up. So fashion brands and a lot of footwear and retailers had to do some serious retrenching. They're still sort of reconfiguring things, but what it has done in the industry, even for retail and fashion, is accelerate the rise of e-commerce and omnichannel distribution for them, right? The trend that we already knew was underway for e-commerce to displace brick and mortar stores, in-person retail shopping was just accelerated by 2 or 3 years from its normal cycle, I think, in this space. So retailers were interested in improving their visibility, but were very concerned about conserving cash in this space, not knowing what the economic certainty was going to bring. So we've seen a tremendous uptick in interest in our technologies from the manufacturing sector. There were certainly challenges in certain manufacturing sectors that are impacted by country lockdowns and consumer demand shifting. But just as many who realized how vulnerable and fragile their international supply chains were by this upheaval in freight patterns and the violent swings in demand cycles and availability, and what they might have seen as a low priority, longer term supply chain transformation, streamlining, digitalization effort has suddenly assumed top of mind visibility at the C-suite to accelerate and make sure that they've got a full handle on their global supply chains so they can expose where they are vulnerable, where they have control, and respond more swiftly, build that agility to respond to these volatile spikes in demand and these contractions in supply, so that they can take advantage when the market shifts their way and protect their profitability when market winds shift in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's really interesting to see that there's inbound visibility, then there's the outbound visibility, right? Because
right,
as you just perfectly pointed out, companies now, the race is on in regard to who has the product, how can I fulfill it. And, it goes all the way back to something I noted a while back, but, our CEO noted this. It's all about the delivery experience. And, if you have a bad delivery experience, that can ruin the whole thing. That can ruin it for, the retailer. It can ruin it for the consumer. So sometimes the product or the delivery is just as important as the product itself. And right now, I think back to, we're in the middle of the pandemic when everyone was looking for things, and you're on a retailer's website and you go to put it in your cart and then it's out of stock, and you immediately start having to search for alternatives. And so you're absolutely right. Having visibility right now and inbound and to outbound and inbound, I would say is more critical now than ever.
Yeah, so you and I have been in transportation for a while, and one of the primary drivers for any transportation group is driving down the cost of freight, right? We've got what's the lowest rate we can move this at. What we're seeing is just a complete reversal of that perspective in transportation groups right now. It's keeping that customer, avoiding that lost sale at any cost. If we need to move this low profit item via air freight so that our shelves are not empty, or so that we don't have to turn customers away from our e-commerce site, we will do that rather than wait for another 4 weeks to ship it by ocean or something. So the cost benefit trade-off in terms of what you're paying for service levels, and speed of transport has shifted kind of dramatically in many supply chains right now. And that focus on not losing customers or on winning more customers during this turbulent time. If your competitors don't have products in stock and you do, then that customer is likely to stick with you even after this pandemic chaos and so forth begins to stabilize. So it's a very dynamic and fluid challenge to the traditional way that companies treat transportation decisions, both tactical and strategic in their businesses, I think.
I would agree. And one thing I was going to ask is, you mentioned you mentioned the I think the procurement capability you guys have. Are you seeing, and you said air freight notion, are you seeing customers needing that for road as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the trucking industry in North America has had a lot of ups and downs. Certain pockets were doing marvelously if they were involved in grocery and retail supply. If you were delivering toilet paper, those trucks were busy all the time. My goodness. But other sectors as well, if they were in retail supply for clothing, fashion, that sort of thing, yeah, not so much activity going on there. So grocery is still very busy and robust, but other manufacturing things for consumer demand and even for automotive has slowed down dramatically. So I think we've seen a lot of capacity in the trucking space exit the market in North America that might return, but there's still a lot of challenges from the spikes in demand, sudden surges of import volumes, for instance, when the companies finally turn on the spigot from their overseas suppliers to restock their shelves. There aren't enough dray carriers around to move all of those containers out of the ports of Long Beach and LA in some cases. So there will continue to be mismatched capacity, I think, in trucking, and companies are likely to want to contract with core carriers or work with very dependable brokers or 3PLs that have very strong carrier networks that they work with to ensure that capacity is there when they need it for their business, even if it means paying a higher rate per mile.
Yeah, right now that's huge. And I was just thinking to one of the things you were talking about specifically around air freight is, we saw a big shift in just the passenger planes being used for cargo. And so, I mean, air freight right now is super hot. And it looks like no matter which way you look at it from a political standpoint, there's a lot of containers still coming into the United States with the trade going on right now.
It is. I think I saw statistically the volumes coming out of China into U.S. Western ports is like at record high levels.
Right.
Of course, a lot of that might be PPE equipment, but still.
Yeah.
That's a lot to be dealt with from a logistics standpoint.
That's right. And of course, and then we're already naturally in the middle of everyone gearing up for the holidays and stocking and everything. So just on top of that, let me flip to the.
I think markets are cautiously optimistic about that as well, too. So they're laying a little more inventory, hoping for a brighter retail outlook for that traditional holiday shopping season, even the back to school spike. So, yeah.
Sure. And again, I'll just point to the critical need for visibility. But I would also say, and this plays right into what you guys offer as well, the visibility in the four walls, because there's the visibility, obviously in transit, but then you need to have visibility what's in your DC, you need to have visibility what's in your store, and tie it all together. And I know that you guys offer those capabilities for your customers.
Yes. There's a tremendous interest in not thinking about the supply chain in the siloed traditional manner. This is the international logistics aspect. This is the freight forwarders aspect. This is my dray carriers area. This is, how I control it into the DC. And then there's a whole nother group that's responsible for the outbound transportation planning. All of these disconnected historical ways to approach transportation logistics, they get in the way of visibility, right? Because every time you have a chain of custody handoff for those goods, there's something lost in that translation, that interface between those two. So we see, particularly with larger global, more mature supply chains, that they recognize the value of connecting the dots, both in inbound and outbound supply chains, that this increases their nimbleness, their ability to turn on a dime and react to both market opportunity, move product around into regions where there's great demand for it, and also to slam on the brakes if something is showing that demand is going to evaporate, even for a short-term period or maybe longer-term shifts in the marketplace. Without that visibility as enabling technology in their supply chain infrastructure, a lot of the value from their other technology investments simply can't be realized.
Yeah, and we're happy as Project 44 is happy to be a partner with you guys in regard to just being able to help power some of those solutions that you have. So thanks.
Project 44 has a great name. You're well respected both in the European theater. We were delighted with the acquisition of Gatehouse Logistics there a few years ago. Great move on your part as well. We are sort of an international customer base. So our customers are very interested in Project 44 coverage across Europe as well as in North America. And we're delighted with this partnership and making more noise about it in the world as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And I don't want to leave off a comment. So let me look and see what we've got on LinkedIn here.
Great.
Looks like one of your buddies says hello, John Fitzgerald. John says hi.
Hello,
Monica.
John.
Yeah. And
hello.
Then here's a question for you, Monica. Can Infor Nexus track PO and factory status at tier 1 and tier 2 supplier levels? I think you probably already answered that, but maybe.
Tier 1 we can. Tier 2 becomes a little more problematic for us in overseas suppliers. But yeah, quite regularly we do both primary supplier networks and their raw material, at least at a tier 1 level. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. And then the last question that I was really thinking about, and I ask everyone is, look into your crystal ball and 2021, and maybe even beyond, just depends on really technology trends, what you're seeing in the industry, what you think is what else you think is going to pop up. I mean, you guys are involved in a lot, right? In the space. So it'd be interesting to know. And where I'm going with that is more of, some people saying it's AI, it's machine learning, it's cloud. I just want to get your thought from from an Infor perspective.
Well, let me tackle cloud first.
Okay.
If a software vendor is new to the cloud, they're about 5 years too late. GT Nexus started its business in the cloud before cloud was a thing. In 1999, when we were founded and you could only access our solution through internet browsers, companies were still wrestling with whether cloud was the way to go. Nowadays, even for ERP solutions, and I'm very proud of Infor that they had the visionary leadership in the ERP space to bet so heavily on cloud deployment of ERP capabilities for businesses. And we've got a tremendous number of customers, tens of thousands of customers, frankly, around the world that use Infor solutions. And they're in all sorts of industry verticals, from aerospace and food and beverage to heavy equipment manufacturing, distribution organizations, agriculture, public sector, healthcare, quite a few healthcare and healthcare material providers as well too. They're all benefiting from Infor's early bets and investments in cloud-based solution technology. So cloud is kind of a gimme at this point. The future of supply chains, there was a lot of talk last year about autonomy, autonomous trucks driving without people in them, autonomous supply chains that were operating largely lights out, robots in the warehouse, the supply chain technology, placing orders, triggering shipments, doing all of these things without the intervention of people, basically turn the switch on and walk away and leave it. There is a statement that the CEO of Unilever, I think, put out recently about how Unilever has been weathering the COVID storm. And it was something to the effect that humans trump forecasting capability 9 times out of 10 in this type of a volatile environment. That every dollar that Unilever has spent in visibility and enabling agility in their supply chain hugely outweighs, or has had 10 times ROI versus anything that they've invested in for forecasting. So with AI and machine learning technology, and I have some background in the space as well too, these models are built looking backwards at data. And if you've got a lot of data and the environment is very stable, they can provide extraordinarily precise, granular predictions about what's likely to happen in the future and the best decisions that you can make from a strategic and tactical standpoint. When you're faced with a completely new environment like COVID through its supply chains, AI has no idea what to do with it. And this is where you have to turn back to people, to the experienced, talented professionals in your supply chain group who've weathered up and down cycles, who know how to make things happen, who know how to solve problems, who have tools at their disposal, connectivity with their service providers to make things happen quickly. And I think it's going to be a triumphant moment for supply chain professionals and for career development in this space to really make their mark, because it's humans that are going to make the difference for successful companies, not AI, not machine learning for the next several years.
Yeah, interesting take on that. And I think that, the thing is we just you utilize technology, we give people tools to make their jobs easier. And, we had on week 3, we had Dr. Mary Holcomb from University of Tennessee Supply Chain Institute join us. And, she actually talked a little bit about that and said, people are still critical to the supply chain. And they have to, right? Operators are very, still critical, but technology is helping them make better decisions.
Exactly.
And that's the game that we're all in, right? Right now we're all in this game of trying to make someone's decisions easier and make their job easier. So great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me check the comments one more time. We're at the end. This has been great. I love to hear your thoughts. Always have. You are very tuned into the industry, and obviously I know that you're definitely tuned into what your customers are doing because you're in the product management side of things. Looks like comments are clear. We've answered all the questions.
Right.
A lot of people, what we find, Monica, is a lot of people will come back and watch these videos, and they'll also come to the Project 44 YouTube channel. They'll watch these. Sometimes we get questions. If we do, obviously we'll reach out and let you know. It's great to have you on. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule.
It was a pleasure, Thomas. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. And folks, next week we're taking a break. And then we'll rejoin our session on October 14th. And we will continue to put the spotlight on partners. And we're going to run this all the way through October now. So we're excited to keep doing this. The response has been great. And so we can look forward to seeing you on October 14th. Monica, thanks again. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Thomas. Be well.
Yeah, you too.